In today's conversation, we have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Marc Goffaux, Chief Compliance Officer at Hawkeye Wealth. You'll have a chance to hear about Marc's background, his role as a CCO, and views on recent regulations, including the client-focused reforms. All right, Marc, let's jump right into this. If someone were to be lucky enough to look up your bio or even have the experience of working together with you, they'd see that you are a leader in our wealth compliance industry. If we were to step back, I know this from having chatted with you, what attracted you to this position of serving as a CCO in this line of work?
You know, it's a great question. I've always joked with friends that when they ask me, it's not one of those things where I woke up one day as a kid and thought I want to be a chief compliance officer when I grow up, right? Most people want to be firefighters, I guess. But when, you know, for me to become a CCO, I was actually thrusted in the position as a small firm. You know, a team right now of 5 who always had people wearing multiple hats, and I was coming from the dealing representative side. And upon the departure of a chief compliance officer and discussions internally, you know, the experience was there for me to take up the role. And it just happens to be that I really enjoyed it. You know, I really like the combination of being a part-time lawyer, part-time operations officer, and, you know, making sure everything matches up that way. So it wasn't, you know, where personally the interest comes from, you know, that's hard to pinpoint, but I really was put into the position and it turned out that it was a great fit. So.
Hey, there's a couple of things that are somewhat of a common theme in our industry. Number one, I think I'm finding, Marc, is that a lot of folks kind of don't plan to be in a compliance role, but find a very nice niche in that space. And then to your point, Marc, about kind of wearing multiple hats, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. I think there's some data out there that 75% of compliance officers have said they ultimately have multiple hats in their line of work. So this is certainly interesting. Now, I'm curious about sort of that concept of wearing multiple hats and how it aligns with sort of facing off against new regulations, specifically the client-focused reforms. Marc has been coined one of the most significant enhancements to the advisor-client relationship. What are your thoughts on these specific regulations? Maybe as you said, half of your line of work is as a lawyer, and how you feel these will shape our industry going forward?
I mean, of course, it's no surprise you must be living under a rock to not think that they are going to be, you know, having significant impacts on the industry. You know, I would go as far as to say you're not doing your job as a compliance person not to know that. I mean, there's obviously a lot of components to it. I mean, a bit of context. We're coming from, you know, my bias is from a small business perspective, right? We are a small team. We are a boutique investment firm, specifically on the private security side. And you know, when I look at the changes in regulations, of course, we can talk about in detail how relevant the risk capacity changes are and components on the KYC. But what I really look forward to seeing the impact that considering other products in your recommendations as an advisor will have, not just on the operational side and how companies adapt to make sure that that plays a role when advice is being given, but also in how that will bring sort of the principle and the intention behind the regulations top of mind to advisors to make sure that they're keeping the client's interests always at heart. And I think that change is key only because you know, of course, it's not mandatory for you to recommend or to look at products that are outside of your shelf, as there was some back and forth with the regulators to make sure, you know, what the final rule was going to be. But I think, you know, from our perspective and even from other players that I'm in conversation with in the industry, they're going beyond just looking at their own shelf for recommendations. They are taking extra steps to say, okay, we have, you name it, these mutual funds on the shelf, we have these private securities I know being offered. Beyond that, are we being competitive? Are we looking at other products? Are we certain that what we're recommending to our clients is actually the best product? And I think that will have a significant impact moving forward. Whether the rules will change again and whether there will be some fine tuning, you know, that's if I had the crystal ball to know what the regulators are thinking, always, you know, I'll be the best chief compliance officer. But in terms of keeping that top of mind, I think they will have a very positive and significant impact.
Couldn't agree with you more, Mark, because everybody we spoke with from prior to regulations being sort of solidified or put into official text, and then post the compliance deadline of December 2021, there was this kind of a little bit of a whiplash moment. What does this comparison of alternatives mean? And I love the way you kind of paraphrased and put it in the investor's perspective, right? Is it in the investor's best interest to sort of know that the product that's being recommended or security that's being recommended to them is in their best interest, is aligned to their overall objectives, risk tolerance, so on and so forth. So really like the way you frame that.
And if I may add another piece to that, I mean, it's when you go above and beyond to understand the landscape of the products, not only from a KYC and advisor-client relationship component that your business will benefit, but also on another part of the regulatory framework is your KYP obligation, knowing your product, and those go hand in hand so closely, and I think as well. It will not only, if you are one of those firms that is going above and beyond with that piece, you will also find, at least from our experience, that other areas of not only your business obligation to be compliant, but also in finding the right product and treating your clients well by treating your advisors well with the right education and the right KYP. It's going to be impactful for sure.
Hey, this is why you wear the Chief Compliance Officer hat. I love the way you've sort of you've scanned the regulations and you simplified it in a digestible manner, and it is a win-win-win. The regulations, I think, find a way for pushing the dial forward and finding a way for advisors to act in their client's best interest, which I'm sure a lot of advisors were already. The regulations kind of put a stamp on the ground for that. Now, obviously you've shared your views on sort of the regulations and I'm curious what role you believe technology plays more holistically when you're looking at sort of these specific CFR regulations. You mentioned assessing alternatives, KYP regulations. Any thoughts on that front?
Well, I mean, what area of compliance does technology not play a part these days? Really, I think the question to that is none, and we can finish our conversation right here and there. but in terms of where it could potentially have the biggest impact, really, it's the way I see it is you want to automate. Technology is all about automation. What can you make sure that you can automate so that there's less mistakes, which of course, from a compliance standpoint, that's what you want to achieve, the least amount of mistakes possible. But also from that advisor-client relationship piece, you want to make sure that the interactions that are had between the advisor and client are meaningful and related to the investment and less related to fixing mistakes that were on a form or fixing issues that were generated because you didn't have the right process, right? That's one. So it improves your relationship with your clients. It improves your customer service, and then throwing back to that KYP conversation and making sure that you are recommending something after taking into consideration other products. That will play a key role in making sure that not only of course. My bias as a small firm, we don't have that many products as an exempt market dealer on the shelf, but I know that a lot of IROC dealers will have multiple mutual funds available, and they need to automate the recommendation to make sense behind that. But you can go, like I said, beyond that, use the technology that you already have to make sure that you're also competitive within the product that you are recommending by looking at other firms, looking at other shelves, to make sure that the best product is being given.
Mark, we should add you to our internal sales team. That for sure. Love what you shared, and I can tell you with 100% confidence that as our line of work has expanded into the United States as well, and let's just paraphrase it and say across North America, I really think we're at the beginning of finding possibilities where technology can actually automate, bring a higher degree of automation in that advisor-client relationship. Can't tell you how many firms we've worked with, how many firms we've sort of asked, what is your internal process and procedures? And there is a process and procedures, and then there's the actual sort of sales practices that are fairly manual and I'd say time intensive. So
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you on and the facility that and efficiency that technology adds to the mix. So
and if I can add another piece, which I alluded to this in the past in some of our other conversations, is the difficulty with that I see running a financial firm or being in a financial firm with regards to technology use. Is, of course, getting the scalability and the benefit per cost right. And I can say that from a boutique firm, that there are obviously certain software services that would be beyond the scale that we have based on the number of clients and capital that we manage, versus say a larger firm that might be able to afford it. But of course, there are a lot of alternatives. There are a lot of different products that are based on scalability. It's just a matter of making sure you are just looking at the data, like how much time is spent. If you don't have the fanciest software available, the fanciest service possible, how much time are you spending on, I want to say banal things like data entry and double checking forms that were filled, double checking information, rather than just being able to say, answer a question that the regulator asked or answer a question that a client has asked, in a quick format, or do you have to go through several paper files and to be able to find the answer? So you really want to keep that in mind as you grow, to make sure that when you do make that move to technology, it's cost effective, of course.
Right on. I think this is a great segue to sort of ask you one of my favorite questions, which is, Marc, you've talked about kind of embracing new regulations that enhance the advisor-client relationship, the role of technology. If Marc had that magic wand, that infamous magic wand, what would you do to help us transform the industry?
Do you have like an hour or two for us to continue talking? I mean, I would say uniformity. The more the regulators can spend time, there are always conversations about what rules are being changed so that we have less of a cost in terms of time spent, right? Just from an efficiency perspective, not even from a remove a rule perspective. It's just how can we make sure that things can be understood easily and work cross province, can be facilitated anytime uniformity can be added to rules. I would wave that magic wand all day.
Marc, it's always a pleasure. I'm sure we'll have you back on our show, and thank you very much for your time and your thoughtful remarks.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Marc. If you enjoyed today's conversation with Marc Goffaux, please like this video and subscribe to Investorcom's YouTube channel for more on our Wealth Compliance Leader series.